I always believed that family was supposed to be your first source of love, support, and protection. I grew up thinking that no matter what happened, no matter how hard life became, my parents and siblings would be the ones standing beside me. But life has a way of teaching lessons in ways you never expect. It was only when I started building something of my own, when I tried to step out of the shadow of everyone's expectations, that I learned just how quickly people you care about can turn against you. And how that pain can either break you completely, or push you to create a new life for yourself. In my case, it pushed me to start my own company completely alone, after being disowned by the very people who were supposed to love me most. My name is not the important part. What matters is what I went through and what I rebuilt from nothing. For years, I lived in a home where decisions about my life were made for me. My parents believed they knew what was best for me. They believed the only path to success was the one they approved. They chose who I married, what career I should follow, and how I should behave. I was always the quiet one, the one who obeyed, who didn't want to cause trouble. I convinced myself that being dutiful would earn love, that sacrifices would be appreciated. But the truth is, the more I gave, the more they took. I married my ex-husband because my family told me he was perfect for me. They said he was responsible, educated, reliable. They said a girl like me should be grateful that someone like him even wanted me. And I believed them. I thought marriage was supposed to be a partnership where two people grow together. But instead, it felt like I had traded one cage for another. My ex-husband never really saw me. He didn't care about my dreams, my ideas, or the things that made me who I was. To him, I was just someone who was supposed to serve, to follow, and to stay quiet. I remember the day I mentioned, just softly, that I wanted to start something of my own. Not a huge business, not something grand. Just something small where I could use my own talent, my own creativity. His reaction was almost instant. He laughed right in my face. He said I was being childish. That business was for people who were bold, intelligent, and strategic. He told me I was none of those things. He told me I was weak, emotional, and naive. And my family agreed with him. My parents said I was being ungrateful. My sister said I was trying to act like I was better than everyone. They tried to make me feel ashamed of dreaming, ashamed of wanting more than a controlled life. And for a long time I believed them. I doubted myself every single day. I kept telling myself that maybe they were right, maybe I wasn't capable of anything. Maybe all I was meant to be was someone who lived according to other people's decisions. But there comes a moment when pain becomes stronger than fear. A moment when you finally ask yourself, if I don't live my life now, then when? That moment came after one of the worst arguments I ever had with my family. I still remember the words my mother said to me. She said, "You will never survive without us. You will come crawling back." And my ex-husband looked at me with the same cold expression he always had. No concern. No love. Just disappointment that I dared to think differently. That night I packed a small bag and left. I had no grand plan. No detailed path. Just a burning determination inside me. I cried until I couldn't breathe, but I didn't turn back. I slept in a friend's spare room for weeks. I started working small jobs, saving every bit I could. I studied at night, taught myself skills online that I was told I would never be able to learn. Every day was hard. Nothing came easy. But for the first time in my life, everything I was doing was for me. The journey of starting my company wasn't smooth. There were days I felt like giving up. Days when I remembered my mother's voice telling me I would fail. But instead of letting it break me, I let it fuel me. I wanted to prove to myself, not to them, that I had worth. I worked quietly. I didn't announce anything. I didn't try to show off. I built slowly, step by step, piece by piece. I learned through mistakes, failures, and moments of doubt. And slowly, very slowly, I started to see results. People noticed my work. Clients started trusting me. My confidence began to grow. The day my company was officially registered, I cried again. But this time the tears were different. These were tears of healing, of relief, of strength. I had done something I was told I was incapable of. I had created something with my own hands, my own ideas, my own courage. I felt free. But life has an interesting way of turning in circles. Because now, after everything, after I was pushed out, after I was told I was worthless, after I rebuilt myself from scratch, my family is back. Not just my parents, but my sister and even my ex-husband. Suddenly they want to talk. Suddenly they want to reconnect. Suddenly they remember that I am family. I won't lie. Seeing them again brought up emotions I thought I had buried. Pain, anger, confusion. A part of me wanted to slam the door in their faces. But another part of me wondered why they came. Was it guilt? Was it regret? Or was it something else entirely? Because here is the twist. They didn't come back just to say sorry. They came because now, they need me. And what they are asking from me now, is something that could change everything again. And in the next part, I will tell you exactly what they said when they stood in front of me, after all those years, after all that pain, and what they wanted from me now. When they showed up at my office, I didn't understand what I was feeling at first. It wasn't happiness and it wasn't anger. It was something in between, something heavy and unsettling. I remember standing behind my desk, my hands resting on the wooden surface, trying to steady myself. My sister was the first to enter. She looked around the room slowly, taking everything in, the shelves, the certificates, the small plants by the window. I could tell she wasn't expecting to see me doing well. And behind her, my parents stood close together, almost as if they were afraid to step too far inside. And then my ex-husband walked in last, his face calm, but his eyes scanning everything as though he was evaluating, measuring, calculating. No one spoke at first. It was my mother who finally broke the silence. She said my name softly, in the same tone she used when I was a child, a tone filled with control disguised as affection. I didn't reply. I just waited. I wanted to hear what they had come for. I wasn't going to make it easy for them. My father cleared his throat, and he tried to speak as if everything was normal. He tried to act like he was still the man in charge, still the voice of authority. He said something about how families sometimes fight, how misunderstandings happen, how people say things they don't mean. He spoke like he believed I would just smile and pretend none of the past happened. But the past did happen. And I remembered every word that was said, every door that was shut in my face, every moment I felt small and invisible. My sister kept looking at me but not directly in the eyes. She looked uncomfortable, nervous. She had always been the one who followed my parents closely, the one who repeated their opinions, their judgments. But now, she looked like someone who didn't know which side she was supposed to be on. I couldn't tell if she was here because she wanted to be or because she was told to be. My ex-husband did not try to hide anything. He looked at me with a face that was familiar in all the wrong ways, calm, composed, confident. The same face he wore when he dismissed my dreams, when he made me believe I was weak. He didn't look embarrassed. He didn't look sorry. He looked like a man who believed he still had a place in my life. They were all standing together, but I could feel something fractured between them. Something was off. Something had changed. And I realized they didn't just come to reconnect. They didn't bring any apology. They didn't have any warmth. They had come because they wanted something. I waited for them to say it. I waited because I wanted to hear the truth from their own mouths. It was my mother again who finally said the real reason. She said that my father's business was struggling. That the company my family had relied on for decades was falling apart. She said that they were in trouble financially, that they had made some decisions that didn't go as planned. She didn't say it directly, but I understood. They were sinking. And now, they were looking at me as if I was the solution. My father didn't deny it. He just stayed still, looking tired, older than I remembered. And my sister finally spoke, her voice small and uncertain. She said that they needed help. She said that they needed support. She said that they were hoping that I would step in. I didn't say anything. I didn't move. I let their words settle in the room. And then my ex-husband stepped forward. He spoke with that same calm tone he always used, the tone that used to make me doubt myself. He said that since my business was doing well, maybe we could work together. Maybe we could rebuild as a team. He said we were once partners and there was no reason we couldn't find a way back to that. Something inside me froze. The idea of returning to that life, that silence, that smallness, it made my chest tighten. I realized he didn't come here to admit he was wrong. He came because he thought my success was something he could step into. Something he could control. Something he could benefit from. I looked at all of them, then really looked. And in that moment it was painfully clear. They hadn't come back because they missed me. They didn't come back because they regretted anything. They came back because they believed I had something they needed now. And somehow they still expected me to obey. To give. To sacrifice. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I didn't want to say anything out of anger. I didn't want to say something I couldn't take back. So I told them I needed time to think. My voice was steady, calm. So different from the girl they once knew. They didn't expect that. My father nodded slowly. My mother seemed slightly relieved, almost believing that meant I would help. My sister still looked unsure. And my ex-husband just smiled, like he thought he had already won. After they left, I sat in my office alone, staring at the door long after it closed. My mind was full, not just with what they said, but with memories I hadn't visited in a long time. I remembered how many times I tried to speak up and was silenced. I remembered how many times my ideas were dismissed. I I remembered the loneliness of sleeping beside someone who didn't see me. I remembered how breaking free felt like tearing off something that had been attached to my soul for years. I remembered how painful it was to learn to stand on my own feet. And now, after all of that, the people who once told me I was nothing wanted me to save them. I didn't know what I was going to do. Part of me was still that daughter who once wanted her family to be proud of her. Part of me was still that woman who believed in love and forgiveness. But another part of me had grown into someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who understood her own worth. The question now wasn't whether I could help them. The question was whether I should. And I knew that whatever choice I made, it would change everything again. But before I could decide, something unexpected happened. Something that made the situation even more complicated. Something that made me realize their return was not just about the business failing. There was something deeper, something hidden, something they still had not told me. And when I discovered what it was, everything shifted again. I'll tell you what I found out, in the next part. After they left my office, I tried to return to work, but my thoughts kept circling everything they said. I couldn't focus. The documents on my desk blurred into one long line of shapes. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, trying to breathe slowly. I didn't want to make decisions out of anger or bitterness. I wanted to understand what was really happening, because something about all of it didn't feel straightforward. My family never traveled anywhere without a strategy. Every move had a motive, and I needed to know what theirs was. So, I decided to learn more before deciding anything. I contacted someone who had been quietly watching the business world long before I opened my own company, an old colleague who once worked under my father but left after disagreements. He kept up with industry news, and I knew he'd tell me the truth without picking sides. When I asked him about my family's company, he didn't sound surprised. He told me things were worse than they made it sound. The company wasn't just struggling, it was on the brink of collapse. Years of mismanagement, poor leadership, unwise partnerships, and overspending on projects that never returned profit. The market changed, but my father refused to adapt. He ran the business like the world would always stay the same, like everything would always go his way. And now the consequences had caught up. But there was something else. There was someone new involved in their business, someone I didn't know about. A business associate who had invested heavily in the company a year earlier. According to my colleague, this investor was now demanding returns that the company couldn't produce. My family wasn't just struggling. They were under pressure. Serious pressure. That explained the tension I saw in their faces. That explained why they came all together, even though they barely agreed on anything before. It also explained why they were suddenly interested in me, not in reconnecting with me, not in apologizing, but in using what I had built to solve their problem. I thanked my colleague and hung up, sitting in silence for a while. I tried to imagine what they expected. Did they think I would smile and willingly hand over my company? Did they really believe I would step back into that life where I was always quiet, always smaller, always beneath them? I wasn't the same anymore. I had changed. But they hadn't. Later that night, I got a message from my sister. She asked if we could meet. Just the two of us. I hesitated. Part of me didn't trust any of them. But another part of me remembered who we were before everything became complicated. We were close once. Or at least I thought we were. Maybe there was something she wanted to say that she couldn't say in front of our parents and my ex-husband. I agreed to meet her at a small cafe near the old neighborhood where we grew up. When I arrived, she was already there, holding a cup of tea in her hands like she was trying to warm herself. Her face looked tired. Not physically tired. Emotionally tired. She didn't waste time. She told me the truth, or at least the part she knew. She said that after I left, things in the house changed. My parents argued more. My father grew quieter. My mother grew harsher. The house, which used to be full of noise and control and order, had become tense and unstable. My sister said she tried to stay strong, but she felt trapped too, expected to follow every rule just like I was expected to before. She said that watching me leave made her realize something, that she had never made a single decision for her own life. Not once. I felt something shift inside me. A small part of me softened. Not completely. Just enough to listen. Then she told me something else. She said my ex-husband didn't come back for partnership or reconciliation. He came back because if the company failed, he had something to lose too. Something personal. Something tied to his own career and reputation. Helping my family wasn't his main priority. Helping himself was. I should have expected that. It was exactly the kind of man he was. But what she said next is what changed everything. She told me that the investor my parents partnered with was someone powerful. Someone who didn't like losing. Someone who didn't accept failure. And this person wasn't just threatening the business. They were threatening something much larger: our family's reputation, property, and future security. My parents were scared. Really scared. But they were too proud to admit it. When she finished talking, she looked at me with eyes that didn't match the face I remembered from years ago. Eyes that were not confident or judgmental. Eyes that were simply asking for help. Not demanding. Not manipulating. Just asking. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't have answers yet. We sat quietly for a while. The sound of cups and quiet conversations filled the space between us. It was strange sitting across from someone who once stood beside the people who hurt me. Someone who repeated words that cut deep. Someone who only now realized what those words had done. Before we left, my sister reached across the table and took my hand gently. It was such a small gesture. But it was the first time in years that any member of my family touched me without control in their intent. She said, "I know you don't owe us anything. I just needed you to know the truth. Whatever you choose, I'll understand." And then she walked away. I drove home, but I didn't go inside immediately. I sat in the car, staring at nothing, thinking about everything. The pain. The growth. The loneliness. The strength. The part of me that once believed no family meant no belonging. The part of me that learned belonging can be rebuilt from the ground up, even inside yourself. I had worked hard for my independence. I had suffered to earn my peace. And now, I faced a choice that could drag me back into the storm I escaped. But the situation was no longer simple. It was layered with truths I hadn't known before. It wasn't just my parents' pride. It wasn't just my ex-husband's selfishness. It was also my sister's quiet suffering. The collapse of something that once shaped us all. And the weight of a threat none of them could handle alone. The question had changed. It wasn't just should I help. It was what will happen if I don't? And the truth was, I didn't yet know the answer. What I did know was this: the next step would reveal more than the past ever did. And what I was about to uncover next would change how I saw everything. The days that followed were heavy. I tried to go about my routines, tried to focus on meetings, projects, clients, numbers, but everywhere I turned, my mind kept drifting. I felt like I was living in two worlds again. One world was the life I had built for myself, quiet, steady, controlled. The other was the past I thought I had escaped, the expectations, the pressure, the emotional weight that never fully disappeared. I knew I needed to see everything for myself before deciding anything. So I went to visit the building that once felt like the center of our lives. My family's company headquarters. I hadn't set foot in that place since the day everything fell apart. Just walking through the glass doors made my chest tighten. The reception area looked almost the same, but the atmosphere was different. It felt darker somehow, quieter, like something heavy hung in the air. Some of the employees looked surprised to see me. Some avoided eye contact. Others gave small, hesitant smiles. I could tell the company's decline was no longer a hidden secret. People were worried. You could see it in the way they moved, in the way they pretended to look busy even when there was nothing to do. I walked down the hall to my father's office. The door was slightly open. I could hear my parents' voices inside, low, tense. I paused for a moment before knocking. When I stepped in, they both looked up at me like they had been waiting, though they hadn't known for sure I would come. My father looked older. His hair had more gray than I remembered. His shoulders weren't as straight. He didn't speak right away. My mother, on the other hand, tried to greet me with a softened voice, but it was clear her calm was strained. I could see the stress in her eyes, in the way her hands trembled slightly even though she tried to hide it. I didn't sit. I asked them to explain everything honestly without leaving anything out. They told me about the investor, the one my sister had mentioned. His name was Mr. Hale. A businessman with a reputation for turning companies around, but also a reputation for taking control. Someone who treated business deals like battles he needed to win. Someone who didn't care who got hurt in the process. My father admitted that he had agreed to terms he shouldn't have. He had been desperate to keep the company alive. The company was more than a business to him, it was his identity. His proof to the world that he had achieved something. The idea of losing it terrified him more than anything. So he partnered with someone powerful, someone strategic, someone who saw vulnerability and stepped in with a smile. Now that investor wanted majority control. And if my family refused, he would demand the repayment of funds they didn't have. Which meant everything would be lost. The business, the property attached to it, the house, the stability they once controlled so easily. I listened, but I didn't rush to comfort them. I couldn't. Not yet. There were still pieces missing. I asked where my ex-husband fit into all of this. My father exhaled, slow and heavy. He explained that my ex-husband had been the one who introduced them to Mr. Hale. He was the link, the bridge. The one who convinced them that partnering with him was the best move. And now he was trying to secure his own place in the company's future, no matter what it cost anyone else. My stomach tightened. I wasn't shocked, but hearing confirmation made everything feel sharper, more real. The room fell silent. I needed air. I stepped outside onto the balcony down the hall, the same place I used to escape to when tensions were high in my old life. The wind was cool. The city felt distant, like the world below was moving on without waiting for any of us. As I stood there, I noticed my sister waiting near the opposite end of the hall. She had followed but didn't want to interrupt. When our eyes met, she came closer. Her voice was soft when she spoke. She told me there was one more thing I needed to know. She said that the investor had been talking to my ex-husband privately. That there were discussions happening without my parents' knowledge. Plans that didn't include keeping my family in control at all, even if everyone worked to save the company. If I stepped in, if I helped, it might not actually fix anything. It might just give them more leverage to take everything faster. Hearing that made something inside me go still. Completely still. If that was true, then the situation wasn't just about saving the business. It was about protecting myself from being used again. But that's when the unexpected happened. Before my sister could say more, we heard footsteps. My ex-husband appeared at the end of the hall. He looked perfectly calm, like he had been expecting this moment. He asked if we could talk privately. I didn't want to, but I also knew I needed to hear everything. So I followed him into a conference room with tall windows overlooking the city. He smiled, the way he always did when he believed he was in control. He said that everything could be fixed if I just agreed to work with him again. He said it like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Like the past was just a small misunderstanding. Like the years of belittling never happened. Like I had never walked out alone with nothing except determination. The calmness in his tone was almost worse than anger. It made it clear he didn't understand who I had become. He still saw me as the woman who once needed approval. The one who stayed quiet. He started explaining how the company could be saved, how we could rebuild our lives, how my family could be united again. The words sounded beautiful on the surface, but beneath them was a quiet assumption that I would fall back into my old place. Silent, yielding, obedient. And then he said something that took the air out of the room. He said, "You owe us this." Those words hit me so hard I couldn't speak for a moment. As if my independence was a debt. As if rebuilding my life was something I had taken from them. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it. I looked at him, and for the first time I saw him clearly, not as the person I once tried to love, not as the person my family told me I needed, but as someone who never saw me as an equal. And that was when I realized, this wasn't just about business. This wasn't just about family. This was about who I was now. And who I refused to be again. But before I could answer him, before I could speak even a single word, the conference room door opened. And the investor, Mr. Hale himself, walked in. He looked at me with a calm, analytical expression. As if the next decision I made would determine everything. And that's where everything truly changed. I'll tell you what he said and what I did next. Mr. Hale stepped into the conference room with the kind of presence that made everything go quiet. He didn't rush, didn't smile, didn't pretend. He simply closed the door behind him and faced us like he had been waiting for this exact moment. My ex-husband straightened up quickly, as if he wanted to prove he was in control of the situation. But Mr. Hale barely looked at him. His attention was on me. He greeted me politely, almost warmly, but there was something sharp behind his eyes. Something observant. Something calculating. I could tell instantly that he was not a man who said anything he didn't mean. He gestured to a chair, but I didn't sit. I wanted to keep my ground. He seemed to notice, and he nodded once, as if acknowledging a detail that mattered more than words. He began speaking slowly, explaining that he admired the success of my company. He knew when it started, how it grew, the clients I had secured, the partnerships I had built. He knew details I had never openly discussed. I listened, trying to understand where he was leading. I could see my ex-husband shifting slightly, uncomfortable, like he wasn't aware of how much Mr. Hale already knew. Then Mr. Hale said something that changed the direction of everything. He said that the original investment agreement with my family wasn't just a business deal, it was part of a larger expansion strategy. One that depended on merging my company with theirs. And my ex-husband was the one who proposed that plan from the beginning. The room felt colder. I stared at him, trying to process. My ex-husband had planned this long before my family came to me. His attempt to come back wasn't an afterthought or a result of seeing my success. It was part of a strategy to regain control over me, my work, and my future from the very start. The marriage had ended, but the pattern hadn't. Mr. Hale didn't sugarcoat any of it. He said my ex-husband had positioned himself between both companies to eventually benefit from whichever one succeeded. He played both sides. And now, with one company collapsing and mine rising, he wanted to attach himself to the one with power. I looked at my ex-husband then and he didn't deny it. Instead, he said something that felt like a cold blade sliding under my skin. He said, "It's just business. You understand that? Just business." The years of silence I endured. The dismissal of my dreams. The loneliness. The breaking apart of myself piece by piece until I had to rebuild from nothing. Just business. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was already clear. But Mr. Hale wasn't finished. His tone shifted, becoming more serious. He said he wasn't the villain in this story. He had invested to grow the company, but when he realized it was sinking, he looked for solutions. And the only real solution now was me. He said that if I stepped in, if I agreed to lead a restructuring, if I took control of both companies under my name, not as a daughter, not as an ex-wife, but as the sole decision maker, he would back me. He would remove my ex-husband entirely. He would remove my parents from financial liability. He would ensure my family had a stable place to land. But in exchange, I would own everything. The company. The responsibility. The consequences. It would make me the head of a legacy that once belonged to everyone else. I didn't expect that. Not from him. Not from anyone. My ex-husband immediately objected. He tried to argue. He tried to step forward, but Mr. Hale simply lifted his hand and he fell silent. Authority didn't need volume. Not in this room. My heart was beating unevenly. I felt a mix of emotions. Power, confusion, betrayal, fear, anger, disbelief. This wasn't the kind of victory I imagined when I left years ago. It wasn't even victory, not yet. It was a crossroads with consequences I couldn't yet see. And before I could respond, Mr. Hale said something that raised the stakes again. He said that my family didn't know about this offer. They thought they were here to ask me for help. They didn't realize that the decision had already shifted beyond them. They didn't know that the only way to prevent everything from collapsing was for me to take control. And if I refused, everything they built would be gone in weeks. My sister's words echoed in my mind. The fear in her eyes. The quiet hope. The quiet pain. I thought I understood the situation before, but now I realized I had only been looking at the surface. The real conflict wasn't just between me and my family. It wasn't even about forgiveness or pride. The real conflict was about legacy, identity, and power. The life I rebuilt was mine. Completely mine. And stepping into this world again would mean stepping back into a place where love and control had always been tangled and suffocating. It meant trusting myself in a bigger way than I ever had before. It meant facing everything I once ran from, but now with strength I didn't have back then. I didn't answer right away. I told Mr. Hale I needed proof. Documents. Terms. Full transparency. He nodded again like he expected that response. He said he would send everything. Before leaving, he gave me one last look, not threatening, not friendly, but curious, like someone watching a story unfold and waiting to see who I would choose to become. When he left the room, only my ex-husband and I remained. He looked at me with anger now, not calm. His voice was low when he spoke. He said I was making a mistake, that I couldn't handle everything alone, that I didn't understand how heavy leadership was, that I would fall without him. I didn't say anything. I just walked past him and opened the door. But as I stepped into the hallway, I saw my parents waiting down the corridor. And behind them, my sister. Their faces were full of expectation, fear, hope, confusion. And I realized something. No matter what I chose, someone was going to be hurt. Someone was going to feel betrayed. Someone was going to lose something. And this time, I wasn't the one who would be broken. This time, I had the power. But power doesn't come without consequences. And what came next would test every part of who I had become. In the next part, I'll tell you what I chose to do next. I remember sitting in that conference room, feeling the walls close in, like every breath was tied to the outcome of the next few minutes. It wasn't just a business meeting anymore. It was everything. Years of sacrifice, late nights, tears I never showed anyone, moments when I almost gave up, leading to this. My parents sat across from me, stiff and uneasy. My sister was quiet, her eyes lowered. And my ex-husband? He looked almost too calm, like he had already planned the ending. I knew something was coming. I had felt it in my bones. But I didn't expect the truth to hit the way it did. My ex-husband leaned forward and placed a stack of papers on the table. "We didn't come here to talk," he said slowly. "We came to claim what is ours." His voice cut through the air like a cold blade. My heart dropped. I stared at the documents. It was a legal petition, an action to claim partnership and ownership of my company. My company. The company I built from nothing, from the ruins of the life they left me in. My parents didn't look ashamed. My sister didn't look sympathetic. They looked determined. I kept my voice steady even though inside I was shaking. You didn't build this company. You didn't even support me. You turned your backs on me when I needed you. My mother finally spoke. We only did what was necessary. You chose to marry him. You chose to embarrass the family. You chose your own path. So now we are choosing ours. Embarrass the family. They had been using that line since the day they disowned me. I remembered standing at the doorway of the house where I once belonged, my bags packed, my eyes red from crying, begging my mother to just listen. But she had closed the door, and with it, the chapter of my life where I believed family meant unconditional love. My ex-husband slowly smiled, the kind of smile I used to think was charming. Now it was just cruel. You think you succeeded alone? You think you built all this without what we taught you? You owe us. There it was. The story they had created in their minds. The narrative they told themselves so they could sleep peacefully at night. So they could believe I didn't survive without them. So they could believe I never grew, never healed, never became more. I remembered every moment he had tried to dim me. Every time he told me my dreams were too big. Every time my family agreed with him. Every time I felt small. Unseen. Unwanted. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Still, this wasn't just a personal attack. It was strategic. Calculated. If their claim succeeded, I could lose everything. My clients, my brand, the community I built, my independence. The room felt heavier now. Their silence wasn't guilt. It was expectation. They believed they would win. I opened the folder I had brought. Across from me, my attorney sat quietly watching. I placed my own documents on the table. Proof. Receipts. Years of hard work. Financial records with every investment I made, every contract signed, every late-night email, every design draft, every step taken alone. These show that I funded the company from my own earnings from the job I had before I left. Every expense came from my account. Every client relationship was built by me. None of you contributed anything. Not time. Not effort. Not money. Not support. My sister finally looked up, her eyes wide, almost pleading. But I couldn't tell if she was pleading for the truth or for the lie to win. My ex-husband narrowed his eyes. Documents can be forged. My attorney spoke for the first time. Which is why we also brought third-party financial statements, timestamps, transaction histories, and witness testimony. All of which prove she acted independently. And that all of you had no involvement beyond personal relationships. The room went still. My father stood up abruptly, anger rising in his voice. You think you're better than us now? You think success gives you the right to disrespect your family? I didn't stand. I didn't need to. I think respect should be mutual. I begged for your support. I begged to be heard. I begged not to be alone. You left me alone. Now that I survived, you want to return to take what I bled for? My father's face froze, and for the first time, I saw something in him I had never seen before, uncertainty. But before I could breathe relief, my ex-husband spoke again, softer this time, but sharper. This isn't just about money or ownership, he said. It's about control. You were never supposed to do this without us. You were never supposed to grow past what we allowed. The truth in his words shook me. That's what this had always been. Control. Power. The ability to say they made me. The belief that I needed them to exist. My sister finally spoke, her voice trembling. I never wanted this. I just didn't want to lose the family. I didn't want to lose you either. I looked at her, and for a moment, the years of childhood memories, secrets, laughter hugged my heart gently. But pain had built a wall between us, and neither of us knew how to climb it. There was silence. And in that silence, something shifted. This was my life. My journey. My story. And I chose me. I stood up. If you want to take this to court, we will. But I won't let any of you break what I built. Not again. My ex-husband stared at me, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. My parents looked at each other, realizing maybe, just maybe, this time they had miscalculated. But the story didn't end there. Because just when I thought the fight was finally turning in my favor, my attorney slipped me a note under the table. Quietly. Carefully. I read it. And everything inside me changed in one heartbeat. The final twist. One I never saw coming. One that could destroy everything, again. But this time, I wasn't going down without a fight. To be continued. When I read the note my attorney passed me, my breath caught in my chest. It was short, only a few words, but it changed everything. They have already filed an emergency injunction to freeze your business accounts. My heart started to race. It meant that while they were sitting there pretending to negotiate, they had already made a legal move behind my back. My ex-husband, my parents, even my sister, they planned to stop my company from operating, to leave me stuck, helpless, desperate. They didn't just want recognition. They wanted control. They wanted me to come crawling back. For a moment, I felt the ground beneath me shift like I could fall straight through it. The same helplessness I had felt years ago began to creep in. The feeling of standing outside my parents' house, begging to be heard. The feeling of sitting in my car the night my ex-husband said I was worthless. The feeling of starting my business on my bedroom floor, crying silently because I didn't know if I could actually do it. But I reminded myself of something important. I had survived before. And I could survive again. I looked up, meeting my ex-husband's eyes. He thought he had already won. There was a quiet arrogance there, the kind he used to hide behind affection. My parents were watching me too, waiting for me to break. Even my sister looked tense, unsure what would happen next. I straightened my back, held the note under my palm, and took a breath. "We're done here," I said. My voice didn't shake. "If you want to take this to court, we'll go to court. But understand something. I'm not scared of you. Not anymore." My ex-husband leaned back slowly, and for the first time since knowing him, I saw uncertainty. My father opened his mouth to speak, but my attorney stood, closing his folder neatly. "This conversation has ended," he said firmly. We walked out of that conference room together. And when the door closed behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, clarity. A clear sense of who I was and who I no longer needed to be. The legal battle that followed was long. There were days I cried, days I felt exhausted, and days I wondered if it would ever end. But I kept working. I kept leading my team. I kept showing up. Because this business was more than a company. It was proof that I rebuilt myself from the ground up. Every contract, every client, every story told under my brand was a piece of me, stronger, wiser, braver. My attorney was sharp and prepared. The records we presented were detailed and undeniable. Payments, emails, planning documents, timestamps, the evidence was clear. And when my ex-husband and family realized the case was turning against them, their attitude shifted. It wasn't about ownership anymore. It became about pride. They couldn't accept that I didn't need them. They couldn't accept that I had become someone they never expected me to be. My sister surprised me the most. One afternoon during the case, she came to see me. She stood at my office door looking smaller than I remembered. She said she needed to talk. I could have turned her away. I could have ignored her the way they ignored me. But I didn't. Because as much as I had been hurt, I still remembered the girl who used to share secrets with me under the covers late at night. We sat and talked. Really talked. She told me she was scared back then. Scared of going against our parents. Scared of losing the only life she knew. She said she always admired me, that I had done something she never could. She cried. I cried too. And for the first time in years, I felt something soften inside me. Forgiveness didn't happen instantly. But a door opened just a little. As for my parents, they stayed silent during most of the trial. For them, this wasn't only about money. It was about identity. They had believed they knew best. They had believed control was love. I don't know if they ever fully understood the damage they caused. But during the final hearing, when the judge ruled in my favor, I saw something flicker in their eyes. Not regret exactly, but realization. I wasn't the same girl they thought they could silence. The judge's decision was final. The company was legally and entirely mine. They had no rights to it. No share. No ownership. My ex-husband left the courtroom first. My mother looked away. My father didn't say anything at all. But my sister hugged me. And I let her. In the months that followed, I didn't go searching for a family reunion. I didn't force healing or try to fix what was broken in a day. I focused on my company, on my life, on the peace I had fought so hard to earn. And slowly the noise faded. The bitterness softened. My sister and I started meeting for coffee sometimes. No heavy conversations, just small steps toward understanding each other again. I didn't try to rebuild a relationship with my parents. But I didn't carry hate anymore either. Hate is heavy. And I had carried heavy things for too long. My ex-husband moved on with his life. And I moved on with mine. My company flourished. I expanded my team. I mentored young women who felt small in rooms where power was being used against them. I told them that strength isn't loud. It's steady. It grows in quiet places. In lonely nights. In moments where no one believes in you except yourself. I learned something important through all of this. Sometimes family is the people you choose, not the ones you are born to. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes the hardest thing you will ever do is walk away, but it will also be the thing that saves you. If there's anything I want someone listening to my story to take away, it's this. You are allowed to start over. You are allowed to succeed without the approval of others. And you do not owe your strength to the people who tried to take it away. I didn't just start a company. I started a life that belonged to me. And I finally learned that letting go wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning.